Killane, who has been a strong performer across Irish media. He was engaged as the head of sport and then the head of television with RTE, our national public service broadcaster, and then filled a similar role with AIR when they were making their moves into sport. So he's no stranger to us, but now he is playing in the Premier League of Broadcasting in the European Broadcast Union, where he's the executive director of sport. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you today, Glen Killane.
Hi, Rob. Very good to be here with you.
Thank you very much for taking the time out. I know you've got a busy schedule. The research that we've just done there, which paints a somewhat positive picture. We're ahead of the figures which you produced in the guide, reimagining sport and pathways to a gender balanced media coverage. But the challenge is still out there, and what you've done with this piece of work is to actually paint a picture as to how we can get there. There are some brilliant case studies in it. We share a link so that people can download it from the Sport for Business website. One of the numbers that really stood out to me was the fact that in relation to the World Cup in 2019 in France, that the viewership across the EBU members was up by 1,000% on where it had been in Canada. Is that indicative of the real potential that we have here as media and broadcasters to reach a spectacularly large new audience?
Yeah, I absolutely concur with that, Rob. I mean, I think I'm here to shamelessly plug our new publication. I'm here to kind of say, listen, there's some great guidance in that for broadcasters. It's available for everybody. You don't have to be a member of the EBU. We've put it together. It was led by one of our own, Killane O'Leary, deputy head of sport at RT Sport, who's a dear friend of mine for many years. She led our expert group on it, which was made up of several members. It was pulled together by Elsa Arapi in our team, but it's been a project on the go for about 18 months. I mean, the thing I say, Rob, and in answer to your question is, look, promoting women in sport and putting women forward in sport is not just the right thing to do, it's the sensible business decision. The data is there to show that there's a huge appetite for this that is untapped. We're looking at stats. Your stats are very impressive in terms across the print media there and online media. I mean, but we're seeing only 4% coverage of women's sport across the board. I mean, our members stretch out across the whole European continent, North Africa and Middle East, across 56 countries. So we cover quite a wide spread, kind of population base of about 1 billion people. And it's not an equally distributed. So there are countries like Sweden, UK, Ireland doing very well, where women in sport is getting greater prominence. But it's not uniform across the board. But what we're saying to our members is there's a great business opportunity. This is not just the right thing. This is a sensible business decision to make. And we were rights holders across 35, 40 markets for the Women's World Cup in France, and we really pushed it. And it performed gangbusters for our members. I mean, the UK, BBC topped in at 10 million viewers for the England semi-final. That was 10 times the England cricket men's team on the same weekend, and the Cricket World Cup was being held in the UK. So it just shows you the potential there when free-to-air gets behind it, and when we give this great product to the general public, they really do buy into it.
And we're going to be chatting shortly about the BBC and Sky Sports deal with the Women's Super League now. The game every weekend on the BBC. I mean, that's the stuff of dreams. When you and I were growing up, that wasn't possible in any men's sport or anything else. And now we're going to get that for the best of the best in women's soccer. Your member, SVT in Sweden, they joined us when we were last in person in RTE in 2019, and they spoke to the story that it features in the report as well, about how they made a determined effort to set a target of 50% coverage, and they found the stories to actually fill the pages in their online settings. So the stories are out there, and often they're compelling stories, But just as importantly, it doubled the traffic to their website. So this is a commercial imperative as well as a societal one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's huge opportunities there, and I think, look, the SVT example is really telling. I mean, Ussa Headland is a real driving force there, and she took an early lead on this with SVT. She convinced the management to get behind them in around 2014-15. But the key learning that I picked up, and there are others who've worked on this, is the measurement piece. Is that you must measure and you must track it, and you must set targets. And that actually, you set yourself targets. It's okay to be behind the curve. It's okay, but you need to make a decision to make it a priority, and you must measure it if you're going to make it a priority. And I think the business return, and I suppose when you're measuring public service business return, it's about audience engagement. It's about kind of bringing the general public to. It's about shining a light. It's about promoting, great female athletes. And kind of putting them front and center. The great phrase that has been there in the 2020 campaign in Ireland is, if you can't see it, you can't be it. You've just got to make a decision at the top table in your organization to prioritize this, and then measure. And that's the SVT exam. That's what we've learned through SVT and several other members. And the booklet is full of different practical examples of how different broadcasters have gone about this, how they're tackling kind of online abuse as well, things like that. There's a fantastic example from ZDF, one of our German members, about how they tackle kind of online abuse for female sports journalists, because it is very prevalent, unfortunately, and how they've protected their journalists and how they've forged through, and the kind of it looks at the issues from lots of different angles.
We've seen that recently, that question of the willful, stupid abuse of of female presenters, who some Neanderthal men out there think do not have the right to comment on or speak to sport. I mean, we've come from a tradition where we go back in time through people like Gail Gardner and Sue Barker, who were showing that this was possible in the early days of television coverage. Now we have many more. We've got Gabby Yoris, we've got Erin Andrews over in the States, we've got Joanne Cantwell, Jackie Hurley, Evan McQuillan, and so many more here in Ireland as well. But that question of enabling women's voices to be commenting not only on women's sport but on male sport is really important. One of the figures that jumped out to me from the handbook was that in Rio, 17% was the average female participation side from the talent that was going down there and covering the Olympic Games. When we come to Tokyo in 2020, what would be a number that media organizations should be aiming at to actually have that more diverse and more representative share of voice?
Well, it's difficult, Rob, because everybody's coming from a different starting point. I think if you look at some broadcasters, they're it's kind of 50-50. And I think that's the standard. SVT, BBC are approaching that. RT is making great strides. By the way, fantastic to see RTE presenters, really, female presenters coming through, like Yvonne, Joanne, Jackie. These are all my ex-colleagues, and they've done fantastically well. I'm so proud to see them, leading, and it's great that they're being encouraged by the management in RTE. For me, look, I think you've got to set. There's got to be different benchmarks based on where that particular organisation is at. I think you can't judge everybody by the standard that BBC set or RTE or SVT. There are others that are, and we need to encourage them and bring them on, not embarrass them into kind of, God, you guys have done nothing. We need to say, listen, you got to start somewhere. You've got to really get on the bus and begin to set those targets. But I mean, look, given what's happened in the last 12 months with COVID, given all of the challenges and the changes, I mean, if we were able to kind of get into the, over 20%, 30, close to 30%, I think that would be, any form of momentum is good. We need to accelerate the pace of change, but any form of momentum is good. Certainly, we will not tolerate going backwards. And we've just had our assembly of heads of sport last week. Well, I was in Geneva, but they were in like this online. and our whole team was women in sport. We're really, really behind this and really pushing it. And we're saying, look, it's not okay for middle-aged white guys like me to say everything's okay, because we've been saying everything's okay for far too long. It's not okay. We have to get behind this, and we have to support it, and we have to be also kind of understanding that there are different people in different stages of the evolutionary process here. But we need to continue the forward momentum.
I was struck by the fact that the Albanian national broadcaster had a 40% female presentation team down in Rio. So hats off to Albania. Another phrase.
Yeah, no, I mean, you get some surprising results from different broadcasters you wouldn't expect, and it's great. And they need to be encouraged. They need to be promoted, and that's kind of what we're hoping to do with this, because there's an element of this. If public media is not leading the charge on this, who's going to lead the charge on this? So we need to be leaders in this. We need to lay down a mark and show others that actually, this really works. It really works for audiences online and TV and in the print and digital world.
That is so important to show as well as say, and the guide is, packed full. You've got practical ways that broadcasters and media and individuals can actually take on the champion of women's sport. One thing for 2021 that you think is a really positive, actionable item that we might take from the research that has gone in from the EBU?
Well, for me, that it is like, we're looking at a gender balanced kind of portfolio of sports. A lot of the sports we deal with are Olympic sports. So obviously with the Olympics happening, you got gender equity. I think the pay gap is very significant still. I think it's huge. I think we only have 2 females in the top 100 best paid sports people globally. That's not acceptable anymore. We have to stand up and we have to say, look, we want to change that, but we have to encourage those who are trying to make those changes. I think we've got a great opportunity over the next 2 years, actually, because we've got 2 huge years for sport, 2 absolutely massive years. We've got the Olympic Games this year, particularly with all of the other stuff. But next year we have, from an EBU perspective, we've World Athletics Championships in Oregon. We've World Swimming Championships in Fukuoka. We have the Women's European Football Championships in England next year, which is a massive opportunity. And we're the rights holder. Thankfully, we can really push this with our members. Massive opportunity to push women's sport. Football was behind the other sports, a lot of other sports, in terms of the coverage. It's catching up. We're in negotiations with ASO on the women's Tour de France. Another one that we would love to really, really push. So for me, it's about just get on the bus. If you're not there, get on the bus. Don't be embarrassed about it. Don't feel that you're behind the times. Just start. It's got to start somewhere, and you just have to start measuring it and setting targets. Really make it a priority for your organization.
It has been great to have you in the room. I know you've got a board meeting to attend now with the heads of organizations that are broadcasting and telling stories to 1 billion people. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to our slightly smaller audience. But the reimagining sport, pathways to gender balanced media coverage, it really is something that you will learn from and gain from reading. So download it to the new website, and we'll have it up on the website. But for the moment anyway, always great to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rob. Great pleasure to talk to you. Speak soon. Thanks, Rob.